Vanguard. It's a card game where you can become a leader and fight your way to victory.
Imagine it. Imagination becomes your strength.
Hey, what's up, card fighters? In this Chronojet deck profile, we're going to be running 5 grade 4s, 4 grade 3s, 10 grade 2s, and 14 grade 1s. To start off our list, we're going to be running 4 copies of Chrono Dragon Next Stage. Now you need to remember that Next Stage is the combo card, not the kill card. Next Stage gives Chronojet extra power, and remember, Chronojet says no sentinels. So you're supposed to end the game with Chronojet, to say the least. Chronojet, it really shines late game when your opponent's at 5 damage, maybe their hand is extremely low, and you can just go for the kill. Because saying no sentinels is really important right now, especially with critical sentinels going around. They either need to hoard all of their triggers in their hand to try to guard you and make it a no pass, or they're going to have to hope for a miracle heal. The very cool thing about Next Stage is the fact that you can benefit from just riding Next Stage during the ride phase instead of superior riding from deck. So Next Stage's ability, at the end of the battle attack, it rides a Chronojet in soul. As long as you don't soul blast Chronojet Dragon and you pay the cost, then you can always go back and have the option to always go back to Chronojet. This little strat and everything will only really work against like Excel decks, Protect decks, because their numbers are somewhat lower than other Force decks. Next, we're going to be running 1 copy of Metallica Phoenix. Metallica Phoenix doesn't have any special abilities, but it has 3 drive checks. So it's the idea of having early game pressure, but at the end of the day, you're really hoping for your pieces if you really need so. Because, you don't want to be paying the cost and rewriting Chronojet and discarding 2 every single turn if your opponent's not even at 4 or 5 damage. So having this early game option will really help out, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And you can even use it as PG fodder if you really need to. For our grade 3 lineup, we're going to be running 4 copies of Chronojet Dragon. Thanks to its second skill, we're able to use this card as our kill card late game. Now you need to remember, Next Stage is the reason why its numbers get pumped up so much. Next Stage gives this guy plus 15 if you re-ride during the battle phase and pay the cost of Next Stage. You can have Chronojet on the rearguard circle, but only your Vanguard is going to get the plus 15 from Next Stage's skill. For our grade 2 lineup, we're going to start off with 4 copies of Chronobite Tiger. Not only is Chronobite our preferred grade 2 Vanguard, Chronobite allows us to be more aggressive during the game and everything, and have an additional critical on our rearguard. Even if we don't drive check a critical, at least Chronobite will have its own critical just by paying the cost and discarding a card. Push the game a little bit forward, make your opponent discard more cards, and I usually put force markers on one rearguard circle and make a really big number for my rearguard, because when I usually play Chronojet, they always perfect guard Next Stage and allow the rearguard to hit. It makes them think a little bit more and maybe debate on just taking Next Stage's hit instead and guarding Chronobite himself. Next, we're going to be running 3 copies of Steam Scar Cobb. Or Cobb is basically our way of saying late game, if I don't have anything, if I don't have any Smoke Gear Dragons on my rearguard circle, if I don't have any Bearing Rovers, then you can just discard our Cobb instead. But the extra drive check really does help sometimes. If you really don't have any good cards on your hand, maybe you have a grade 2 in your hand and your board's always still full, you can get an additional drive check by just 1 counterblast. You don't really want to use a lot of Urkobs, or you don't want to try to use, you don't have to use Urkob every single turn, because you still need, a counterblast open for Chronojet for when you want to swing for game. Having that extra drive checks every so often really does help. And last, for our grade 2 lineup, we're going to be running 3 copies of Smoke Gear Dragon. Now, Smoke Gear Dragon, I make this deck free in a sense, rearguard. I usually run like 2 regular draw triggers, to hopefully get my pieces in my hand and everything. So when I don't have Bearing Rover, or if I don't have a Cobb in my hand, I just call Smoke Gear and then discard a regular 5k draw trigger, and then boom, ride Next Stage from deck. For our grade 1 lineup, we're going to be starting off with 4 copies of Bearing Rover. Now, although we have Smoke Gear Dragon or a Cobb, Bearing Rover is more like a safety net, and it's also a preferred grade 1 ride, like a safety net and a precaution so that you can ride into Next Stage or Metallica Phoenix consistently rather than just hoping that you see Smoke Gear as soon as possible. Next, you're going to be running 4 copies of Quickie Quickie Worker. Quickie Quickie Worker is a staple in like Lost Legend Chrono Fang, and even Chronojet, simply because of the idea of returning next stage or grade 4s back to deck so you can superior ride them next turn. It really does come in handy, especially when your opponent damage checks next stage and then you heal it away, hopefully back to the discard pile. Or if you discard next stage from your hand using Baron Rover skill or Cobb skill, it really does help out to just send those cards back to deck so you can consistently re-ride and get those force markers and complete the gimmick of Gear Chronicles and Standard right now. But you need to remember though, Quickie can also send triggers back to the deck. If it's late game, you don't want to re-ride your grade 4, you don't want to superior ride your grade 4, just send some triggers back. Send like a heal trigger back to the deck. And because you have to shuffle as soon as you search for next stage anyway, there's hopefully another chance of you getting a heal trigger and healing away some damage. Next, we're going to be running 4 copies of Steam Breath Dragon. Steam Breath Dragon is our generic grade 3 searcher. You can run this card in every Gear Chronicle deck and hopefully benefit from it simply because of its second skill. When placed from hand, look at top 5 cards, reveal a grade 3, put it in the hand, discard a card. And because of its first skill, it's a 13k boost or 13k attacker. Last but not least, we're going to be running 2 copies of Steam Scar Kaylin. Now, Kaylin's skill is Guard Restrict on top of Guard Restrict. Chronojet's skill says no Sentinels. Kaylin says no intercepts, as well as you can only call 3 Guardians from your hand. This is a really annoying card, but it's only annoying late game. Late game is when everything matters, when the intercepts matter, when the cards in your hand matters. So Guard Restrict on top of Guard Restrict makes it a lot easier for you to close out games. But at the same time, this card isn't extremely needed. That's why it's at 2. If you want to bump up the numbers, cool. But if we don't have a lot of Soul Chargers, well, we don't have any Soul Chargers in this deck. You need to make sure that you keep an eye on your Soul when you're using this deck, as well as keep an eye on your Counterblast, because it's really easy to, Counterblast all your damage away, as well as Soul Blast all your soul away, thanks to Smoke Gear and Kaylin. And as well as thanks to our Cobb and Chronojet, it's really easy to just get rid of all of your Counterblast. Trigger lineup is personal preference. I usually run 4 draw trigger perfect guards. I feel as if I don't draw enough with this deck, and plus, having an easier chance to discard cards. I got to discard cards almost every turn, so adding extra cards to my hand really does help me sometimes. I don't think the critical sentinels will really help that much. If you go like 2 critical sentinels and 2 draw trigger sentinels, that might be better. And I also run like 2 regular draw triggers because of Smoke Gear Dragon. And now I usually don't do this, but I also made a second deck profile for Next Stage, mainly because I made a very aggressive deck profile because of Chronobite Tiger, the natural crit and everything. The deck doesn't really have to. I'm just really impatient. I like to end the game as soon as possible. And Chronojet really does play a little bit slower than all of the standard Gear Chronicle decks. Compared to Lost Legend, compared to Chrono Tiger Rebellion, they get crits by themselves. They get crits because of their skills. So because of the fact that Chronojet doesn't really get any natural crits and everything, I feel like I had to put in something that can at least, put them to 2 more damage instead of an extra 1 damage, speed up the game. Because the game, Vanguard Standard has really changed from I go first so I win. It changed more to if you let your opponent get all of their combo pieces, you're in a lot of trouble. And if you allow your opponent to ride 3 times, you're in a lot of trouble. So I wanted to end the game as fast as possible. For the second deck profile that should be on the screen right now, instead of Chronobite Tiger, you run Naboo. But the numbers change. Smoke Gear Dragon is played at 4, and Naboo is played at 3. Naboo is your Soul Charger. You can even run Naboo at 4 if you want, and Smoke Gear can stay at 3. But this deck really utilizes Smoke Gear more than Urkab and more than Baron Rover. As you can see, Baron Rover is also replaced by Chrono Tooth, because Chrono Tooth has a cool ability of when it's discarded because of an ability, you can Counterblast 1, call it as a rest, and draw a card. So this deck really does, emphasize the drawing. You want to increase your hand size as much as possible and everything. And because of Naboo's Soul Charging, you can Soul Blast more with Smoke Gear Dragon as long as you re-ride a grade 4. And this deck really isn't like, it's not faster in a sense. It fills your board up as well as it gets more cards into your hand. And some people find that more important than dealing damage. And I understand that. So I feel like this should be a good, good template for those who just prefer hand over damage. Now guys, remember, this is just a template. This deck profile can be changed, modified to your heart's content. So don't be afraid to do so. There's multiple ways of playing Chronojet. That's why I even made 2 deck profiles instead of 1. And I've tested out both. The next stage booster box comes out on the 10th. Make sure you tell me about your pulls and everything. Follow me on Twitter, tweet out to me, and show me those cool cards that you pulled in your packs and everything. Hopefully you can get the clan pack too. Well, for the clan that you want at least. I hope you guys have a nice day. Hope your pulls are amazing. Peace out.